Hello, my friends. It's me. My camera's not on. Oh my god, I'm so sad. That's okay. You don't need to look at me. What you do need to see is the screen that I have in front of you. So today we are going to pick up after our intro and we're going to be drafting our rising action. So we know that the rising action is the longest part of the plot. In a short story, it's probably going to take up like 2 pages, more pages if you plan on your story being longer. And in the rising action, the intro's done. We know who the character is, we know what the context is, we know how they got into this situation in the first place. And when the rising action begins, that's when the plot mountain starts to kind of climb up. It is when the big conflict event starts, like the external conflict that leads to all the internal reactions of fear and the challenges and really changes the quest of the protagonist. So until this moment, my protagonist's quest was to get home and start working on her painting, and she's kind of upset that her mom is dragged her to the market, and she's working on this interesting painting of birds in the fountain in her backyard, and they look really different because the mountain, Mount Vesuvius, that's near them, is starting to spit all of this ash and smoke into the sky. And some people say it's a volcano, but she doesn't know quite what it is. So she just thinks it's a cool painting. So her mom sends her to get some fish. She's daydreaming and she wanders away from them. So I finished my intro and she is gets lost here. She's thinking about the birds from this morning and she can't find the fish stall. She decides to go and look for the stall that sells the fabric dye and the pigment to make paint just to look at it. And then she can't find it. And then she realizes she wanders kind of far. Now, this moment is where my rising action begins. Now, you might wonder, how do I start my rising action from my intro? Well, you just start it. So, my recommendation is for your rough draft, just go ahead and start. So, I decided to have someone say fire. Okay. And that's how mine begins. So, mine starts fire, a voice suddenly shrieked. When I look at my timeline, what I see is that I have the volcano just erupting. So that seems like a good way. Someone sees it. It's not her, but someone. The next thing that happens in my timeline is all of a sudden the air around me was full of the sounds of people screaming. She hears people screaming, she sees it erupt, and she doesn't know what's going on. So that's the first part of my rising action on my timeline. So I wrote, I want to write what she sees, right? I looked up to see bodies running in every direction. What was going on? I could probably make this an inner thought. Don't want to forget that I need detail variety, right? In the distance, I saw the grayish sky light up in a flash of orange, red, and yellow. That's a good description. People everywhere were pointing in the direction of Mount Vesuvius. That's a good action. I turned to where they were facing. Sure enough, the gray ash that had been escaping from the top of the mountain had magically turned into a ball of fire and black smoke that was now rolling quickly down the hill towards us. So sometimes, if you want to make something really dramatic, give it its own paragraph. So something can be rolling down a hill, but it's not necessarily dangerous, but it is if it's toward them. So I made that its own paragraph. I gasped, Mama! I yelled. So I gave her some dialogue, even though she's alone, over the sounds of screaming everywhere. I looked around, but I couldn't see my mother or brother anywhere. Oh, why did I have to start daydreaming and wandering around today of all days? I could probably make that an inner thought to give my readers something to listen to. I started running too, following people, but I wasn't sure where. So there's action. A mass of men and women and children, all holding on to each other, were now scrambling away from the mountain, occasionally looking back over their shoulders. I dared to look and saw the orange ball of fire getting closer. Okay, so that's enough. I don't want to go too crazy. When I look at my timeline next, I see that she's going to get grabbed by Alba and Cassius, the older couple that are going to take her into their house and try to save her, but she's going to want to go escape and try to find her family. So that's going to be her quest, deciding whether to stay safe or to go and find her mother and brother. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start that. I can probably flesh it out later with more details, but for now, I'm just starting. Okay? All of a sudden, I felt someone grab my arm. Okay? That says grab. Hang on. Grab my arm. I had a lot of descriptions. Come here, little girl. That sounds creepy, but that's okay. A hoarse voice whispered. So at first, I do want her to be a little scared. And a world. To hear Siri. Siri just said I'm not sure about that. Siri's judging my writing. I Siri, stop it. Okay. I screamed and whirled around. A man with a white beard and A woman with long white hair were trying to drag me down a flight of clay steps into a dark cellar. I tried to get away, but his grip on me was firm. Before I knew it, I was inside a room and someone had slammed the door. So this is my transition from outside where the volcano is rolling closer and inside their house. All right. So the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to explain, they're going to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to have the bit where they say who they are. He's going to know what's happening. He's going to explain it's a volcano, and then they're going to explain they can try to keep her safe. And then she's going to make the decision. She's going to be happy she's safe, but then she's going to think of her family, and then she has to decide what to do. And then it's going to get closer and closer to the climax. She's going to hear people screaming outside, and then she's going to escape. And that's my rising action into my climax. So today, just draft as much of your rising action as you can. You don't have to finish it today. This is sort of a rolling deadline that we're doing. So use your timeline, use your emotional timeline as well. Remember, your character has to feel things and have reactions too. And then on Monday, we'll talk about how to make it even more dramatic. Okay, have a good weekend.